if you're that guy and you just came off a draw, I think rematching will be the most competitive thing to do as an athlete. With the Jake Paul situation, is like, it's a money grab fight.
Davis was in a bit of a hole, and he gets an opportunity to fight Jake Paul for $200 million or whatever. I don't mind it at all. As long as Gervonta Davis comes back to the world of boxing after he gets done with this, hey man, you got your money, no worries.
The fight is getting closer as Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis train hard. Jake is seen work eyes and knockout shots, and the tension builds as fans watch pairs for one of the most talked about matchup for their big showdown. Working on his power and Tank sharpens his speed. Both camps are fully focused on how each fighter for their big showdown. Working on his power and Tank sharpens his speed.
They don't get it. Yeah, this Santa Cruz right here, you can't let it burn, baby, let it burn. Mind over matter, son, mind over matter. Ain't nobody doing no shit like this. Come in the desert. He's trying to stay away from the desert, he come in the desert.
Shakur Stevenson voiced his opinion on the ongoing trend of ups. He argued that while fights like this add no real value to it, a matchup such as, in his view, both Mayweather and Tyson are legends who have already cemented their legacies, underline and do not diminish this unconventional boxing matchup. Like Jake Paul against Gervonta Davis to the Floyd Mayweather against Mike Tyson carries a different weight. If they want to step back into the ring to earn money, it should not be seen as harmful to boxing. Stevenson said that such events bring nostalgia to fans. Unconventional boxing matchup like Jake Paul against Gervonta Davis to the Floyd Mayweather against Mike Tyson carries a different weight. If they want to step forward in the same way celebrity-style exhibitions do.
Bad for the sport of boxing.
I mean, I feel like in Floyd and Tyson situation is different than Jake Paul and Buddy. I feel like with Floyd and Tyson, it's like, okay, y'all deserve it. Y'all legends, y'all paid homage, y'all did the most for the sport of boxing already. So you deserve a big payday and be cool. I'm cool with it. I like it. But with Jake and Buddy, I feel like Buddy is a participate in the sport of boxing right now. And he just came off a draw, his last fight. So if you're a real champion and top level guy that you say you are, which I think you are too, I think you're the truth. But if you're that guy and you just came off a draw, I think rematching will be the most competitive thing to do as an athlete. With the Jake Paul situation, is like, it's a money grab fight. So to me, it's like some WWE shit.
Yeah, it get choked out. Like, I mean, okay, so he gets this fight with Jake. His value goes up. No, it doesn't. It don't? Not in the sport of boxing. You don't think
it may.
The demand more because he's, because when we looked at the Floyd and just hypothetical, we speak hypotheticals at times, right? You go in there and that big ass nigga knock him the fuck out. I'm just saying, hypothetical. Go in there and knock Tank the fuck out.
That big ass nigga being Jake Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
Knock him the fuck out. Because he's bigger than you. Yeah. For one. By chance, it is a fight.
I think the thing is with Buddy and Jake fight, I feel like it's two sides of me with it. Because from a competitive aspect and me being the mentality that I got, I feel as though I probably would have done the rematch.
Yeah.
But then from a business aspect, if I would have done the rematch and I did not win the fight, the Jake Paul fight will be a lot less money and a lot less lucrative. So,
you think so?
From a business aspect, I understand that anybody that with a business mind probably would have took that fight for as much money as it was. So I'm a realist. Like, I ain't gonna just bash, bro.
UFC President Dana White delivered a blunt reaction when asked about the proposed clash and Gervonta Davis. That very few fans were genuinely excited for the matchup, but admitted it could actually help Davis. Public scrutiny and lowered his momentum. Jake Paul stepped in with a it could give needs that. Expanding on his take, could realistically defeat technical boxing skills but on sheer size, strength, and reach advantages, while Davis, though powerful, is to fighting lighter men. For White, the outcome, but about whether Davis could attribute between Jake Paul, White claimed Davis had been facing a period of challenges outside the ring which Mitchell offered during this vulnerable time. White pointed out that although the event is being mocked, Davis' exposure and earnings at a time when he needed them most. White shocked many by declaring that Jake Paul Gervonta Davis. His reasoning was based not on tech much smaller and accustomed. The outcome of such a fight would not be about who is the better boxer, overcome the overwhelming natural edge that Paul carries into the ring. Sheer physicality. White emphasized that Paul had potential offer during this vulnerable time. White pointed out that although the event is being mocked, Davis' exposure and earnings at a time when
Jake Paul to beat Gervonta Davis. This is not a fight that I'm excited for at all. I would rather have Gervonta Davis fighting in a real boxing match against the likes of Lamont Roach, Shakur Stevenson, Keyshawn Davis, Emmanuel Navarrete, anybody that is in the 135-pound division and around. That's where I want to see Gervonta Davis fight. However, we live in a world where everybody is trying to do things as big as possible, and the biggest fights possible right now, unfortunately for the sport of boxing, is an exhibition fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta Davis. So, I do like it for this reason though. I like it because it is allowing Gervonta Davis to have a fight that is going to be big and that the mainstream media is going to have to cover, the mainstream media outside the world of boxing. Gervonta Davis has been, without a doubt, blocked, having venues blocked, having fighters, having other promoters paying fighters away to go different directions from Gervonta Davis. So Gervonta Davis was in a bit of a hole. And he gets an opportunity to fight Jake Paul for $200 million or whatever. I don't mind it at all. As long as Gervonta Davis comes back to the world of boxing after he gets done with this, hey man, you got your money, no worries. But you gotta love Dana White having the audacity to pick Jake Paul in this fight.
Former world champion, his honest take, Crawford as an elite fighter with one of the modern boxing size difference times out. Najee pointed out that history has repeatedly shown running into trouble when moving up too far. Jake Paul's natural frame creates problems for despite his. The issue is not about talent, but boxing is still a sport. Strength and durability matter. Suggested that even a fighter as sharp and might find it extremely risky, showing that always erase size disadvantages. Paulie Malignaggi gave on the idea of Terence Crawford stepping into the ring with Jake Paul. While he praised best skill sets in he cautioned that sizes can sometimes outweigh technical brilliance. Malignaggi's smaller champions are in weight. He emphasized that Jake, combined with his raw punching power, could serious Crawford superior technique. For Malignaggi, about physical limits, where size, he suggests adaptable as Crawford, to face someone who outweighs him so significant skill cannot essential offer during this vulnerable time. White pointed out that although the event is being mocked, Davis.
I think Davis is more to lose because he's the bona fide world champion. I don't care if he's much smaller. I think Jake Paul has sort of plateaued as far as his boxing is concerned. It's rather low level. He's big, he's physical, he's strong, he can hit. So there is that risk. Davis, at lightweight, you're in a moment where it's too physical for you. You can clinch. Against the heavyweight, where you clinch. You ain't getting out of that corner just clinching anymore if you run out of space. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. But Davis, listen, there's a lot of talking points that I'm sure we'll get into when this gets closer to the fight. Davis can still punch a lightweight, can drop a heavyweight. There's a lot to gain there, right? If Davis knocks
the answer is yes.
If Davis drops Jake on his ass, as much as Davis is the one with more to lose, it's still a highlight moment.
A visual that will stay forever.
Yeah, but if you get dropped, even if you're smaller, you're still a world champion in multiple weight classes. If you get dropped, what's the look? What's the feel? On the inside, as boxers, me and Chris Algier, the champion, even you, Jimmy, you have fight experience, so we know that the risk is a big guy that big hits you. You're probably going down if you're a small guy if he hits you clean. So we know the risk, but how does it look to the public eye who don't understand that? You know what I mean? The public. So there is a lot to lose, though. There's a bit to gain. I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with this had Davis's career arc been one that benefited boxing. Davis was manufactured and put into a position where he's supposed to benefit boxing, and I don't think he has. I think he's hurt boxing. So by giving him this reward, that's my problem. Why are we watching this? Why don't you make him earn his spot that he still hasn't earned, mind you?
Analysts were forced to major adjust when the originally chosen venue. Local officials reportedly dismissed it as more of a test, leading to an outright as the initial location was considered ideal substantial revenue. In the fight, promoters scrambled to find an alternative site. They secured a new venue that was planned. However, this sudden shift has ability. Detractors argue the contest itself may not hold much up as being driven more by motives than genuine competitive merit. It has become a talking point in itself, with observers stating that the controversy surrounding the venue long in the boxing world at all revealed that the organizer to make a adjustment declined to host the highly publicized matchup circus event, then a legitimate sporting contest refusal to approve. This decision came as a surprise to many for attracting a large crowd and generating instead of delaying or scrapping that would embrace the spectacle. Within failing to host the clash, ensuring the event would proceed as fueled criticism about the fight's overall credit that if an arena of such prestige rejected it, sporting value. Many now view the matchup entertainment and finance. The abrupt relocation suggestion change underscores the ongoing debate about whether these crossover fights belong to motives than genuine competitive merit. It has become a talking point in itself, with observers stating that the controversy surrounding the venue long in the boxing world at all revealed that the organizer to make
35 pounds. Jake Paul is over 50 pounds heavier than Gervonta Tank Davis, and he's nearly a foot taller than Gervonta Tank Davis. So no sanction body wants to, and no commission wants to, should I say, I keep saying sanction body, no commission wants to sanction it. They don't want to be a part of it, as I told you guys. So they announced that the fight was going to take place November 14th in Atlanta at the State Farm Arena where the Atlanta Hawks play. And the Georgia Athletic Commission, he came out and he made a serious statement. And he let the world know that they falsely advertised this fight, okay? Because no commission won't sanction it to be a real boxing match, let alone they're not even interested in allowing it to be an exhibition, okay? They don't even want it to be, they don't even want to be responsible for an exhibition of this magnitude, right? So he comes out and he says, the commissioner, head of the Georgia Commission, he comes out and he says, quote, I believe it's in the public's interest to know because they've been promoting something they should not have been promoting. It's the dumbest thing I ever heard. It's a money grabber, and I'm not okay with that. So they telling him it's just for the money.
Retired champion Carl Froch gave his input by labeling Jake Paul's career as one motivated solely by money. Froch argued that Paul is not chasing boxing greatness, but rather financial opportunities. According to him, Paul selects opponents based on what will generate the most attention and revenue, not what will provide the toughest challenges. Froch admitted that this strategy works in terms of marketing, but claimed it prevents Paul from gaining respect as a true competitor in the sport.
He mentioned me before, and there'll be people out there saying, oh, Carl Froch's talking about himself, he's after a payday. Listen, I'm not after a payday. I'm doing all right. There's no problems with my finances. But I'll take the fucking payday, of course I will. And I'll end Jake Paul with one punch. I'd go in there one-armed and beat this guy. He can't box. He's absolutely fucking useless, which we saw last night with Mike Tyson. Talking about Canelo Alvarez. I've not mentioned Canelo Alvarez because it's just laughable. Jake Paul, Canelo Alvarez, can you imagine? I mean, Jake Paul fancies that and he jumps in the ring with him. I will pay homage to him because fair play, if he jumps in there with Canelo Alvarez, he'll get absolutely fucking destroyed and it will be fast and it will be messy and it will be bad for his health as well, potentially.
MMA star Nate Diaz dismissed the matchup altogether. In Diaz's view, the spectacle designed for boxing for leaning too heavily on these manufacturers' credibility. Diaz are not about competition, sporting events, saying he did not even want to offer a prediction. Bout is not a legitimate contest, but rather a pay-per-view sales. He criticized the direction of boxing events, which he believes damaged the sport, maintained that such fights are purely about profit, and for that reason, he cannot treat them as serious. Sports are not about competition, but events, saying he did.
I gotta ask you, Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis. Does Davis have a chance?
Gervonta is a great boxer, but he ain't gonna do.
So you got Jake Paul by knockout, or?
No, I don't got anybody, but I don't think.
He's just too small.
It's just. I don't want to beat up somebody that small. I don't want. You know what I'm saying?
What do you think of the fight?
I don't want to lose to somebody else. There's no point in the fight. It's a great fight, actually. I'm not hating on the fight, but I think. My thoughts on it is let's watch and see what happens.
Ryan Garcia said that boxing is turning into WWE.
Yeah, that's
with that type of matchup. What do you agree? Last thing, White House card, like he said, you want Conor McGregor.
Yeah, but the whole thing's at WWE. So
right.
It's like, at least that's happening and getting something to talk about, something to watch. And I'm looking forward to that fight, actually.
One of the most debated aspects of Gervonta Davis centers on the glaring difference in their and physical attributes, and naturally carries far more weight, height, reach, and overall. Gervonta Davis is a 5'5" visions where his explosiveness and presence against opponents of a similar build. Aspects of the proposed matchup between Jake Paul and size. Jake Paul, who has competed against larger opponent, enters the discussion with a clear edge and hull frame. In contrast, Gervonta, fighter, who typically competes around 130 pounds, excelling in punching power, have made him a feared. Davis's ability to
holy shit, Jake Paul versus Tank Davis is actually happening. What the f is going on? I guess Tank is going broke because that's the only justifiable reason you ruin your legacy against a guy like Jake Paul. And yes, I do think Jake Paul is going to win. Tank Davis is a much better boxer and has crazy power, but he's 5'5", 130. That power is not going to carry over against someone who is 6'1", 210. And it's not like Jake is bad. Yes, his fights are boring. He says he's going to step in the ring and sleep his opponents, but the only people who end up sleeping are the audience. Mike Tyson fight. But at the end of the day, he's a big guy with power who's training boxing full time, and he has beaten some legitimate competition. Woodley, Nate Diaz, Anderson Silva, Mike Perry had a competitive fight with Tommy Fury, but it's crazy how particular Jake has to be when selecting his opponents. They have to have enough clout to be interesting, enough skill to be taken seriously as a threat, but at the same time have clear weaknesses and disadvantages that Jake and his team can exploit to win. Now that he's fighting an elite boxer, he has to fight someone 7 weight classes down. I mean, Tank could win if he makes Jake do a very aggressive weight cut, but I just don't see that happening. I got Jake by 3rd round TKO. He should put me on the co-main event and allow me to fight Francis Ngannou. That would be an easy first round knockout for myself.
Fans and analysis over the way unusual fights dominate headlines in recent years. As an example of this worrying contests, who champions or settle rivalries, promote spectacles that blur the line in entertainment. Critics say this tradition and disappoints purists who expect competitive matchups via attention. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful that crown new voters increasingly push lines between sport shift undermines boxing's that elevate the best talents rather than events designed only for media tradition, and disappoints purists who expect competitive matchups via attention. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful that crown new voters increasingly push lines between sport shift undermines boxing's. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful that crown new voters increasingly push lines between sport shift undermines boxing's that elevate the best talents rather than events designed only for media tradition, and disappoints purists who expect competitive matchups via attention. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful creation over the way unusual fights dominate headlines.
So breaking news, Jake Paul will be taking on Tank Davis in the exhibition on November 15th in Atlanta, Georgia, live on Netflix. And this is crazy for multiple reasons. One, they have a huge size difference. Tank Davis, he's a lightweight, normally fights at 135 pounds. And Jake Paul, he's a cruiserweight, usually fights at 200 pounds. So there's a good 60 to 65 pound difference here. It could also mean that Tank Davis is no longer interested in competing for titles anymore and is cashing out of boxing. You know, there's been a lot of talks that Tank is nearing retirement this year. He was supposed to rematch Lamar Roach after their first fight went to a draw, but instead of chasing the Roach rematch, instead he takes a Jake Paul fight for money. So maybe this is Tank's last, or one of his last fights. And same for Jake Paul. He just got ranked number 14 at cruiserweight after beating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. So he's supposed to be fighting other ranked contenders or top guys at cruiserweight, but instead he's taking a money fight. But I do expect these two to go after each other. Even though it is an exhibition, I don't think it'll just be some boring sparring match. I do think they'll try a decent amount. But Tank, obviously, he's a lot more skilled. Jake has a lot more size. But you guys let me know who you got.
An analyst discussing the rise of he explained that Logan and Jake do see only fuels more interest. Whether praised or to dominate conversation by orchestrate, their choice of opponents is boxing achievement and more about genders their continued presence in the sport, regardless of fan disapproval. Paul brothers noted that their strategy has always been built on maximizing attention. He not worry about critics, because every controversy mocked, they continued trading polarizing events. In this, less about narrating headlines. According to this view, the brothers' ability to stay in the spotlight is the key factor that ensures to dominate conversation by orchestrate. Their choice of opponents is
like blockbuster events. They don't look at them as sporting events. They look at them as spectacle. I mean, Logan's in the fucking WWE, for God's sake. That's the way they look at it. And that's the way Jake looks at these kind of events. He does, because he's fighting Gervonta Davis. Into any sports, hardcore, competition, morale, effort, you know, legacy, hierarchy, minded sports person, none of it makes any sense. Because we go, well, no, Gervonta is not in Jake's weight class. What does that mean? We do sport to prove who's better at sport, not with inherent advantages or disadvantages or XYZ. Logan, and I guess Jake for that matter, look at these like, we want to get the most eyes possible regardless of what people say. And I think that Logan and Jake both believe this because of the disadvantages we came into the sport with. If we are to do better than people expected, or if we're able to win or knock someone out, then we're better, which is not true because there's massive disadvantages on the other end. I would say that outweigh the disadvantages on their end, at least Jake said. The way they market these things and act like if I beat Gervonta, I'm better. Or if Logan was like, I beat Floyd and I'm the best boxer in the world, when Floyd wasn't the best boxer when Logan fought him, and also it was a 60-pound weight difference. Like, the way they categorize and narrative shape around it is the thing people get upset about.
Tradition, and disappoints purists who expect competitive matchups via attention. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful, not worry about critics, because every controversy mocked, they continued trading polarizing events. In this, less about tradition, and disappoints purists who expect competitive matchups via attention. Lists alike have expressed frustration. Proposed matchup between Jake Paul and Davis has been held up and instead of focusing on meaningful, not worry about critics, because every controversy narrating headlines. According to this view, the brothers